Hello and welcome to the Happy Families podcast. Montessori schools. You've heard of them, but what are they about? Before we start today's pod, I need to emphasize today's podcast is not sponsored. The Montessori people, if there are any, I don't know if there are or not, but they don't know that I exist. And if they do, they haven't come to me and said, would you do this? The reason I'm doing this pod is because I bumped into somebody by the name of Sylvia Arotin. Sylvia is running a Montessori organisation in northwest Sydney. And I just thought, with my prediction at the start of the year that more and more kids would exit the typical school system and find alternative education pathways, Montessori is going to be on a lot of people's minds as they try to work out where to go and what to do. And so Sylvia, who happens to work in the Montessori space, said she'd love to have a chat about what it is to be involved in Montessori and what it is to have your children educated the Montessori way. So if you'd like to know what Montessori is, what it means and how it works, stay with us. That interview is coming up next. Hello and welcome to the Happy Families podcast, where you get real parenting solutions every single day. This is Australia's most downloaded parenting podcast. My name's Dr. Justin Coulson, and today a conversation with Sylvia Arotin, founder and CEO of Guide and Grow, and also somebody who is not just leading a global community of over 420,000 members, but is also the director and owner of My Montessori Preschool in northwest Sydney, Australia. Sylvia, thanks for being with me on the pod today.
Hi, Justin. Thank you so much for having me.
I feel a little bit ashamed to say this because as long as I have been involved in talking about parenting and working with educators and talking about how there is an exodus from the mainstream school system into alternative forms of schooling, so you're running you call it a preschool, but it's kind of
it's not. I was going
to
say, so it's actually, it's a school or an education centre. So I would call it My Montessori Education Centre because we run programs from birth through to primary school. So it's almost like this hybrid space that sits in between an independent school and an early learning centre. And then we actually move into the primary space where we have primary classrooms that are available for children that are registered in homeschooling.
Okay, so we're going to talk about Montessori in just a sec.
Yeah.
So what you're really doing is you're providing a service where you're saying you don't have to be in the mainstream system and you can give your kids great educational opportunities, and you're providing that.
And setting them up for life. So from birth, our programs really involve the parent or caregiver alongside them, which I think is so fundamental for their learning and development. And then from preschool, they can attend the preschool program. So that's on their own. And then they get ready to move into the school years, whether they then go into mainstream school or if they continue then down alternative homeschooling paths or alternate educations.
All right. Tell us about Montessori. What is this philosophy that we keep on hearing about? We know that there's international Montessori schools all around the place, and people who are sometimes considered by the mainstream to be a little bit left of centre or right of centre or just not in the middle will send their kids to Montessori schools. Yeah. I've toured two of them and been so impressed, but what is the Montessori philosophy?
So the Montessori philosophy, I would say, isn't really an alternate education, but a child development aligned or centered education. So we look at the whole child. Maria Montessori was the first female doctor in Italy. She was not allowed to practice medicine because she was a woman back then. And so she actually was put to observe young children and learning from a science point of view, how they grew, how they developed. And then she actually realized that she could have all of these materials and curriculum to really help them have that holistic development, that social emotional learning. We're talking about independence, problem solving, critical thinking, life skills that children need from such a young age that will then be translational into life. So what we call Montessori is really that learning for life. It's not just academically focused.
Tell me what a typical day would look like if my child was going to a Montessori school.
Okay, so it depends what age group, but just generally we have a mixed age classroom. So a 3 to 6 is a 3 years to 6 years old classroom. Then you have the 6 to 9 classroom, 9 to 12, and it continues. So a typical day is a mixed age room. That way we have this, children are learning social responsibility, mentorship, leadership. The older ones are helping the younger ones are modeling off. So it's kind of like a learning community. And then when you walk into a classroom, you have all different areas of development. So you might walk in and you'll have, a geography section and a math section and a language section and a science section or a woodworking section. And so you have all of the areas of development of curriculum in the environment. And then children go into work cycles. So they go into a 3-hour work cycle, which means that they'll all have their individualized plans and goals and things that they're going to work on. And then they'll go and they'll actually learn how to learn. So they're not all sat down in one spot and being like, okay, everyone, this is what we're learning today. Everyone has their goals and outcomes, and then they'll go and navigate the classroom and choose and select work that they're going to work on, which all aligns to the Australian National Curriculum, but it also gives them the opportunity to learn how to learn.
So it sounds like supporting children's autonomy and allowing them to sort of develop a structure around what they're doing is foundational to how this process works.
Yes, it is. And it's definitely about having the right support. So we prepare the environment. The children will contribute to that space as well. So we have practical life in a Montessori curriculum, which means all of the things like, preparing food, cleaning the space, being part of that community. Then you have the academic, which is all the language and the sciences and the geography materials. So Maria Montessori has a set of curriculum materials that are very hands-on and sensory. So when children are learning about a mathematical concept, for example, they're learning through coloured beads. They're learning through the golden beads, which are all materials that are made to be manipulated. So whatever curriculum outcomes we have materials that are really sensory and hands-on that children can manipulate and learn through tactile, more sensorial ways. We have reading curriculums with all the different types of, symbols that children can manipulate to put into sentences. So all of their learning comes through hands-on manipulation, because we know that the hands are the instruments in which children learn. It's very different to then just sitting with a workbook or a worksheet and writing things out. We have movable alphabets, we have sandpaper letters so children can fill. So these curriculum materials will really help children learn different concepts and experiment with things.
After the break, parents' biggest objections to what a Montessori school might look like. Plus, if your child goes to an alternative school like Montessori, can they still go to university? Can they still have a fantastically successful life like they can from a traditional school system? We'll find out more in just a sec. We're back. It's the Happy Families podcast today, speaking with Sylvia Arotin, who is running Guide and Grow online, plus looks after My Montessori Preschool in northwestern Sydney. Sylvia, there are parents who will roll their eyes and go, namby-pamby, looking after kids like cotton wooling and bubble wrapping and that sort of thing. What are the biggest objections that you get to the whole Montessori approach?
I love it because people think that Montessori children just do what they want, and it's totally not true. So we have freedom within limits. There are boundaries. Children really respect the environment. They respect the rules, and they understand why rules exist. It's not just about keeping children compliant. We really support children's self-regulation, their emotional regulation, the rules in which they operate. And it's really amazing how when you respect children, they actually respect you and the environment. And it's just this beautiful flow of, work and a classroom learning environment. The other objection we get is that how will children adapt to a mainstream school if they are going to move on to that, or university? And the beauty about Montessori is that children come out being able to adapt the life skills like problem solving, critical thinking, independence in learning to any environment. So it actually almost sets them up to be able to be adaptable in any part of society or learning, because they can apply those skills into whatever task is then put in front of them.
I've always been fascinated, and I feel like this has been a really great overview, giving parents a sense of what the school does. So this is my summary. Tell me what I'm missing. Kids who go to Montessori schools are given freedom and independence within appropriate structures, but they're really encouraged to use their brains to find things that they're interested in learning about and to, follow their nose, so long as it's meeting some appropriate learning objectives that are all approved by the larger system, because that just has to be there. They're in mixed age groups, so they're learning how to deal with the social stuff, and they've got teachers who are there to support them and guide them rather than to sit down and say, this is what you have to do today. What have I missed?
Well, actually, you've summarized it really well. I think you've really covered everything that, we're talking about in Montessori, but I also want to say that it supports children's needs wherever they are. So we really meet the children where they're at, whether they need extra support in one particular area, whether they're excelling in another area and they just want to continue that. There's no restriction on where we meet children. The environment and the teachers and the whole classroom dynamic is really helping children thrive wherever they sit. And it actually really supports all learners. So a lot of people think, oh, is Montessori just suited for this type of learner or X type of learner? But it really is a room for all children wherever they're at.
So grateful for your conversation today, Sylvia. Sylvia Arotin, you can find out more about her, get her involved with speaking and training, consulting, and everything else, because as you can tell, Sylvia knows her stuff. SylviaArotin.com. We'll link to Sylvia's website in the show notes. Thanks for the chat, Sylvia, and for shining a light on what Montessori is.
Thanks for having me.
The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Mim Hammonds provides admin, research, and other support. And for more info to make your family happier and resources to support your family, visit happyfamilies.com.au.